There's one group of horror films that can cause more discomfort than imaginable. Scenes of biological mutilation, physical transcendence, and utter, total desecration of the human body. Because what's more horrifying than being human? This is about body horror. Body horror creates unrest by the uninhibited destruction or mutation of the human form. This can range from parasites, disease, rot, and torture, all focusing on the transitory nature of the human body and what it's capable of becoming, for better or for worse. Whereas in extreme horror, we focus on the destruction of the human form, in body horror, we focus on the transformation of it. Most people refer to body horror as the scariest subgenre of horror because there's nothing we are tied closer to than these giant flesh sacks. As well, this is probably where you find the most potent social commentary and metaphors you can only come up with in a fever dream about the social climate, humans themselves, and all of the above. So let's take a look today at body horror and see how your own body becomes your living nightmare. Early horror, all the way from the early 1900s, like The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, Frankenstein, and The Mummy, all show us what happens when men intervene with life, and the dangers of messing with the natural order. Soon after these, it would be amplified with the special effects evolution of film, as well as the climate surrounding the Cold War and quick advancements into science and medicine, creating a new intrigue among writers and audiences on just how far things could go, with altering human chemistry, leading the creation of genre classics including The Blob and The Fly. Both these films would get remakes in the 80s that would cement them and evolve them to new heights in the subgenre that seemed unimaginable. Now, without a doubt, in my humble opinion, The Fly is probably the most influential body horror film ever created. It focuses on the genre staple of the metamorphosis of the human form. In The Fly, a scientist is running a test on a molecular transporter. He accidentally mutates himself with a fly that had gotten itself stuck inside of the transporter, and we watch the slow, brutal mutation of his form merging with the fly, becoming a disgusting hybrid monster. The pacing of the original Fly is so utterly slow, it is the definition of a slow burn, but I think that is what makes this film so good. Also, the rich coloring of this film, which I think a lot of people think the original Fly is in black and white because the sequel was in black and white, which was really odd. I think it was for budgets. But the original Fly is actually in this really rich Technicolor, and I think the pacing of it, the writing, the actual monster, and the coloring of this film takes it above other creature features at the times in the 50s, and I think it holds its own against the eventual 80s remake starring Jeff Goldblum, which that film's perfect. That is a perfect 10 out of 10 film. And of course, Cronenberg's going to get his own section later on, don't worry. The Fly shows the clear correlations of losing one's own humanity and the overstepping of men, which this takes us right into Gothic literature, which is the basis of body horror as a whole. With, of course, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and H.P. Lovecraft's sci-fi based horror that has now become, the go-to word if there's aliens in a horror movie of Lovecraftian horror, as well as Edgar Allan Poe had some tales involving body horror as well. And of course, Franz Kafka, the Metamorphosis. Body horror has always been around, but on film, there is something about translating it that just makes it so much more horrifying. Outside of humans meddling where they shouldn't be, there is the natural fear surrounding the so-called uncanny valley. Beings recognized as almost human, the natural subconscious fear of the unknown, becoming the closest thing to home as possible. This, more often than not, manifests itself into films and stories as Aliens, and I have a personal bias to the 1978 remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which is quite literally the definition of uncanny valley horror. Matthew, a man in San Francisco, starts to notice that those around him, relatives, friends, neighbors, are behaving oddly, starting to lose all sense of individuality. This is shown to us in disjointed scenes of interaction, showing them all becoming different shells of the same temperament and personality, creating a level of unease and confusion. As this begins to spread to insane levels around town, Matthew and his girl start having to look and understand what's going on, and they quickly come to the realization that there are biological copied aliens that are replacing everybody. With the film's surrounding line of the turning being, quote, "You'll be born again into an untroubled world, free of anxiety, fear, hate," unquote. It shows this positive light of the dehumanization and loss of self, and with this happening at the time pace of right after the free love movement in San Francisco, and everyone coming into a much more cookie-cutter, conservative consumerism era, that cannot be lost upon you about why this would be the tagline used in this film. expressing how so many, if not all people, were so caught up within consumerism and self-keeping distance from any nuisance, allowing these alien pods to slowly take over. It stands as an ever-topical film. And now that I said the word alien, we have to talk about Alien, because that chest-bursting scene is a beautiful point of body horror in cinema. Alien came out at a very interesting time, coming off this high of sci-fi interest from all the Star Wars franchises, and I think that is one of the things that boosted it up all the way to the top. Simply put, because I hope you've seen Alien. If you haven't seen Alien, what are you doing? We are following a space crew working for a possibly morally unaligned company, investigating an abandoned spaceship that subsequently gets attacked by the aliens, that unbeknownst to them were their real mission, and they were meant to be captured for study, and the rest of the crew, except for one, were just deemed disposable. The chest bursting scene in Alien is the pivotal point of the movie. You spend almost an hour on this almost slow burn, kind of anxiety-inducing thing about, we know there's kind of something amiss, there's some security breaches, but it's nothing too crazy. But when this chest-bursting scene takes place, it is the full reality of the true horror that is about to take place to the crew. Which, fun fact, when they were filming this, no one knew the effect that was going to happen. No one knew that tiny alien was going to burst out of his chest. So those reactions by everyone were absolutely genuine. And I could go on for hours about the xenomorph, but to put it simply, the xenomorph is the perfect organism. It perverts familiarity, twisting the life cycle and human impulse of violence and reproduction. It makes pregnancy and birth a thing of horror, and shows no value of the human life, turning the natural course of the human psyche against them, crafting the xenomorph as the objective correlation, masking the overall view as a simple, digestible sci-fi horror. Because motherhood is horrifying, isn't it? And as, most body horror, as we've just discussed, focuses its horror on some sort of graphic scene of decay, mutilation, transfiguration. I think there's just as much a case for psychological body horror. And this could be very controversial, but I am standing by it, that I believe Rosemary's Baby is a body horror film. A young couple consisting of Guy, a wannabe actor, and his young wife Rosemary move into a new apartment in New York, where they meet their new odd neighbors who happen to be witches in a coven. Eventually they come to Rosemary's husband to make a deal to have her impregnated against her consent, knowledge, and will with the devil's child in exchange for his acting career to exceed. Rosemary then proceeds to have a grueling, nightmarish pregnancy where she is gaslit from everyone around her, including her own doctor, even at one point saying, quote, "It's like a wire inside me getting tighter and tighter," unquote. Rosemary's Baby stands as a horror focused on the body and the parasite forcefully placed within her. From the psychological effects we see of her facing over the painful transformation of her body and mind while being pregnant, and the true alienation from others and even herself, being forced to believe that she's the crazy one, while in reality she's nothing of the like. It shows the clear metaphorical areas of the entire destruction of your body creating life, and the obvious shows of women not having bodily autonomy, and their value only comes from what they can provide for others, and especially the of-time power imbalance between husband and wife. With Rosemary questioning scratches on her back at one point, and that is when her husband tells her, "Oh, I just had sex with you while you slept. That's what happened," to also explain away the devil baby. And obviously we see she is quite horrified and says nothing, because that is what would have happened at the time, because marital rape, I don't believe, was recognized up until the late 80s. Now, the themes of pregnancy, family, motherhood, parenthood, all of the above take place quite a bit into body horror, but I think it is more than appropriate to discuss the most horrifying parental movie ever made, David Lynch's Eraserhead. Eraserhead, proclaimed Lynch's most spiritual film by himself, creates a picturesque black and white atmosphere of an elegant nightmare. We're sent to a bleak, possibly futuristic post-apocalyptic world, following an awkward young man named Henry who's invited to a family dinner at his girlfriend's house, where Henry then meets... It's really funny because it's obviously mocking like a nuclear family of dysfunction. The mother is asking all these like really weird personal questions, eventually licking his face. His father is bragging about like being paralyzed in one of his limbs. The grandmother sitting there just in a zombie-like state, and then eventually there is this litter of puppies feeding on the mother on the floor, which obviously is our first little metaphor. It's revealed soon to us that Mary had given birth to a premature baby, which The Eraserhead baby gets so many memes. I think there are so many people that have seen the Eraserhead baby and know the Eraserhead baby that have never seen Eraserhead, and I think that is so funny to me because, like, he is just a little guy, isn't he? But Mary's parents convince them, you guys have to take the baby, go live at your house with the baby. So Henry takes Mary and the baby home, and soon enough, Mary runs off. She abandons Henry and the baby, and we get sequences of symbology, song, and finally, the hardest choice an alien parent ever has to make. There's something so deeply personal and alienating about watching Eraserhead. It feels like something that shouldn't be watched in the way of invading privacy of Henry and the horrors of his life, while simultaneously becoming so otherworldly you can do nothing but not look away. Eraserhead is truly unexplainable, and that's the beauty of it. At the bare minimum, we can take away horrors of the domestic life in the reality of creating life. Eraserhead and David Lynch helped pave the way for weirdos to be able to make films, and this ended up at a similar time with my other favorite, David Cronenberg. Now, you cannot say the word body horror without David Cronenberg coming up right after it. He is undeniably the king, the god, the man of body horror, even once again having his own word, Cronenbergian, to describe newer body horror films, because he is that much that guy. He is HIM when it comes to body horror. Now, I think I've discussed time and time again, because it is always topical to what we discuss on here, my favorite Cronenberg film, Videodrome, but I would like to take a look at two of his earliest films, and also some of my personal favorites that I think get overlooked. In particular, the film Rabid, in which a young woman named Rose gets some very experimental skin grafts after a motorcycle accident, in which she begins craving human blood from a phallic stinger spawning in her armpit, and ultimately turning her meals into rabid, bloodthirsty zombies, creating a city outbreak of monsters. It's an expansive spread of terror from the most intimate means to a systematic attack on the entire city, showing a new spin on the undead bloodthirsty beings beyond the fantasy realm of vampires and zombies, and making it a semi-real world occurrence, because pandemic-esque outbreaks and parasite spreading like things has been a thing time and time again in history, as I'm sure all of you are now very violently familiar with. There are certain calling cards for a Cronenberg film, and we see them clearly in Rabid, and its first ever film, Shivers, including transformation, eroticism, technology, and of course, infectious spread. The 1975 film Shivers shows the earliest views and desires of Cronenberg films, with extremely smart and subtle psychological plotlines that will fluidly distort into a world of surrealism, cultivating eroticism, horror, and the equally disturbed of the mind and the stomach. In Shivers, we focus on a doctor living in some new fancy schmancy apartment, and we open up seeing him killing a girl and then pouring this acid to destroy her organs after doing so. During the investigation conducted by another doctor who actually knew our original doctor, it's found out he was doing experiments involving genetically engineered parasites to become organ transplants. And soon enough, in the complex, everyone begins exhibiting signs of infection from these said parasites. Watching this, it's very clear the graphic scenes and natures are not made just to be made. They're not made to shock you. They're there to show you truly to your face the consequences of humans mingling with the form, with technical and medical advances from pain to pleasure in albeit a bit of an unorthodox way. In particular, the scene I always remember from Shivers is there is this woman taking a bath and the parasite curts coming out of the drain, and it's very phallic looking because Cronenberg loves a little phallic parasite, which, you know, don't we all, ladies? But it starts crawling up and then enters in a, you know, an obvious manner we don't see, and she begins to freak out. And, you know, as rudimentary as now that if you've seen later Cronenberg films, you might find these very rudimentary. I think Shivers and Rabid are really cool films, and I think it's so interesting to see just how particular of an interest in style he has had since literally day one. Because David Cronenberg been that freak. Every Cronenberg film, I feel like, has eroticism on the table. And if we're talking about body horror and eroticism, you know there's only one guy to start talking about next. And that would be Clive Barker with his standout film, Hellraiser. Inviting us to the world of the Cenobites, otherworldly creatures that derive pleasure from pain, while decked out in leather and body modifications that bring personal agony, as pain is the only truth to the Cenobite. Hellraiser truly has it all, with the overarching Faust retelling, a love story, and a perfect final girl just trying to survive it all. It's a film that I don't think will ever come out of style. It's a film that I don't think will ever come out of style or not be topical, because humans will always be trying to reach new heights of everything and being far too overzealous in the process. The mutilation of Frank's form begins to truly just match how much of a monster on the inside he is onto the outside. The Cenobites carry an air of beauty and elegance as much as a grotesque and ghastly appearance, with their garb intertwining within their flesh, and foreign objects becoming part of their natural anatomy, the purest intertwinement between sadomasochism and the human-esque form. Clive's style of body horror I find truly individual and violently romantic. You will be hard-pressed to find Clive Barker films and books that don't have some sort of dangerous entanglement between two individuals, which I think shines in his, what I think, underappreciated film, Nightbreed. I'll get into the issues with Nightbreed, okay, don't worry. But in Nightbreed, actually, funny enough, tying back in, David Cronenberg is actually our antagonist and plays a serial killer therapist in a truly horrifying Slipknot-esque mask, which is so freaky. I'm obsessed with it. In Nightbreed, we're following a young, scruffy, leather jacket-clad man named Boone, who's been plagued with horrifying nightmares, and is soon framed for a series of brutal murders, leading to him running from everybody into a sanction called Meridian, where a group of centuries-old creatures called Nightbreed reside, hiding from society, where ultimately the serial killer played by Cronenberg arrives hell-bent on killing Nightbreed and Boone. Although some of the monster designs in this you could call goofy, they are so insanely impressive for the prosthetics and special effects, as well as I think it's really cool the underground cult-like vibe and setup we get from Nightbreed. Where I think Nightbreed kind of falls short on people is there is a lot of story setting up, but not as much building and put through, and that's because it's based off the novel Cabal, which is quite a long novel compared to a lot of other Clive Barker novels. But I think Nightbreed is such a cool and fun film, and I think that all the posters they make for it are bad. I think the original release poster makes it look too much like a slasher, and then the DVD covers all look like it's a joke 80s movie, and I don't know. I think Nightbreed kind of was killed by its branding, and the timing it came out, there were just so much better movies coming out. But I love Nightbreed. I don't care. I think Nightbreed is such a good movie, and I urge you to watch it. It covers a lot of ground, from concepts of hate, desire, misguided morals, and total transformation of the human form. And Nightbreed came out during the 80s, where we were getting a giant boom of horror and technology, and these soon would intermingle with each other, creating new heights of paranoia and reality blurring, as well as the term being coined in 1983 in an article titled, quote, Corporeality, the textuality of the contemporary horror film, unquote, describing the emerging subgenre in the wave of the slasher craze we now know as body horror. Body horror takes a further push on the human's form's disfigurement from what was being made at the time with the likes of mass killers, and it takes a powerful psychological tool involving the total loss of physical control onto your body, from parasites, monsters, and the brain's total decline. In particular, a perfect film, I will stand by this, a perfect film, is John Carpenter's The Thing. The Thing focuses on a group of men in an isolated Antarctic research center where a parasitic alien has infiltrated the group after inhabiting a dog. The group takes it in, and the parasite begins jumping from person to person and destroying the discarded hosts. It creates a level of paranoia, fear, and untrustworthiness that resonates to your core, as we see the total destruction of the man's sanity and physical form. Now, all body horror films really rely on and thrive on the special effects and prosthetics used in it, and The Thing has some of, if not the best ever used on film, practical effects. The way they can tear these men's bodies open, I'm going to try to put the behind the scenes footage on here of them doing this, because it is so impressive. I can do nothing but praise The Thing, and in particular, its makeup. I think a major thriving point is that we never actually get to see what The Thing looks like, but we get to see what it can do and its graphic capabilities. And that's what expresses clearly to our characters and us, the audience, that the thing is something that must be found and destroyed for the safety of everyone. The quick distrust and switch up on each other feels very real. Every man for themselves, leading to even more carnage and ultimately the unknown about what truly happens to the thing and our final two men. And on the note of insane special effects, and a less horrific note, At least, yeah, definitely, is the film Society. This movie is, it's intentionally like a comedy horror, but it is so absolutely insane. I see gifs of it pop up all the time out of context. It's a wild ride of a film. But in this, Bill feels like an outsider from his snotty rich family, and finds out he's as outside as you can get, as it's revealed that the wealthy are these grotesque, monster, nasty creatures with, body parts swapped on the wrong area, and just like, it's insane. The man who thought this up is insane, and I love it. It's insane. Society is the movie you watch to make people go, what the fuck? Eventually, there's a giant, grotesque climax scene where they all meld into each other in a giant mass of disgusting flesh and faces, absorbing Bill's sister's ex-boyfriend for fuel in just an absolutely crazy display. And of course, it's like an 80s horror movie. Like, there's a love arc and stuff, but like, Society, not to discount the writing and stuff, you're watching this for the monsters. You're watching this for this end chunk of this film where we get to see these insane practical effects. Now that is body horror. It plays into, at this point, partially cliche of the rich being inhuman and literally feeding off the poor, but it does it in a fun enough way. There are so many bits of effects and body part swapping in this that are so gnarly and funny. Is it a perfect movie? No. But is it worth a watch? Absolutely. And oddly enough, it was an immediate success in Europe, but it was shelved for release for about 3 years in America. And I can't really find a clear reason why. I just thought that was really peculiar. And as I've mentioned already today, living in a human body is horrifying. Being human is horrifying. But I think everything's a little more horrifying when you are forced to live within a female body. Body horror can reflect the anxieties surrounding societal expectations and exploitations of what it means to be a woman. And when it comes to the discussion of transformations and the societal horrors, aging can be deemed the most horrific and sinful one for a woman to commit. And I think you kind of know exactly where I'm going with this, and that is the absolute standout film, The Substance. Now, The Substance is so well done, and there's just so much in that movie. Like, I watched that movie 3 times in the theater, and I've seen it 3 times out of the theater. The Substance is amazing. And in it, we follow Elizabeth Sparkle, who was an A-list jazzercise star that's been dumped by her network. Eventually, she gets an offer in the mail to take a new experimental drug, which creates a younger version of yourself. In this case, she's dubbed Sue. Elizabeth, feeling thrown away by the world due to her age, is desperate and signs up to take it. And a la Gremlins, there is, some very specific rules. In particular, you must switch every week. And of course, a la Gremlins, the rules don't get followed. And we get to see absolute chaos from this choice. And I guess this is a spoilers? I don't know. I'm talking about movies. At this point, I don't care. Because I have to talk to you about, was it Elysiu Monstrasu or whatever? The way this movie pivots on its head, because it is very, not to be oh, it's really smart and intellectual, but it's really well done and classy, we could say, it's very clean, precise, well written, well executed. And then there is this turning point of the monster. Everyone in my movie theater screamed. I screamed. I couldn't believe it. I mouthed to the floor, looking around, I will forever be able to pull back the moment I saw that happen, and the blood cannons going everywhere, which I believe I read they use fire hoses for it. That movie's so good. There's a clear separation between Elizabeth and Sue, their positions within society, although the same woman in different shells, and we sympathize with both for different reasons. It's almost like Dr. Frankenstein and his monster. In particular, there's a scene in which Elizabeth is getting ready for a date, and she feels good, she's in the mirror, she got everything, she turns to grab her keys to leave, and she looks up and she sees Sue. And now she's kind of already started to align herself with her. She only has value when she's Sue, when she was a young, hot, 20-something-year-old workout star. She goes back to the mirror. She starts trying to fix her makeup, taking things off, taking it off. Frustration. We see the clock going, and she soon enough is getting text from her date because she's not arriving. And ultimately, Elizabeth crawls into her bed, not going on to the date. expressing to us that she thinks she is no longer beautiful or has value. And I think everyone's had some myriad or tiny minor occurrence of something like this happening before. It is honestly a horrible, heartbreaking scene to watch in the film. As well, the correlations to the now everyday use of JLP-1 weight loss drugs is there without it slamming over your head. To have something so garish and showboaty to carry these levels of subtlety is genuinely impressive. There's also intense, graphic, spine-splitting scenes of gore mixed with genuine points of humor, bashing the overtly sexist and ageist entertainment industry and the desperation for the fountain of youth. It's a monstrous mutation of the portrait of Dorian Gray, and I don't think it could have ever came at a better time. And in a very different sense of female body horror, I want to talk about a personal film I enjoy a lot, the 2007 film Teeth. Now, I think Teeth got its rap as like a like it is a comedy horror film, but I think it got just taken as like a gag in the early 2000s around the same time as The Human Centipede, because Teeth was always like the punchline of a joke and not really about people actually watching the film. And I think there's something worth watching about this film and taking home with you. It focuses on the multicultural myth of dentata, something like that, about, women having teeth downstairs. Now, obviously, this, like, urban legend comes from the fear of castration, women's fear of penetration, everything in that nature. And I think Teeth does a really cool job about it. Because, again, this was, like, almost a gag movie to people, and the focus is that she has teeth downstairs. But I think it more shows how desperate men are to manipulate her to gain access and then to get their own immediate karma over that. In it, a young girl who has now developed this situation, seemingly I believe it's implicated from some nuclear, exposure, because her mother also has cancer. Either way, she develops teeth downstairs, and we know this early on because at one point when she was a child in the pool with her brother, he reaches down there and ends up getting his finger snipped. So we have this knowledge carrying over, and then we see her just going through modern teenagehood, meeting a boy she likes, trying to keep her chastity, even a doctor trying to take advantage of her at one point and facing the consequences as such. And Teeth came out in the 2000s chastity rage, where there were teenagers on Disney Channel spouting about their purity rings. So I think Teeth is absolutely worth a watch, as much as it may seem comedic or funny or stupid at times. I think it is a very self-aware, campy film that is expressing a lot of metaphorical issues surrounding womanhood, teenagehood, and women being used for their bodies and the immediate consequences of those actions. And now that we've entered this essentially Darby's pick section of the end of the film, where I'm just talking about movies I enjoy, this is in my Letterboxd top 4. I will take bullets for this film. This film will always be one of my favorite movies of all time. Tetsu, the Iron Man. Filmed in black and white with intense, aggressive editing style, it can be just as unsettling and off-putting as elegant and abstract. A metal fetishist is forcibly integrating scrap metal into his flesh when he's hit and ran by a man driving a car with his girlfriend. Slowly after this, the man notices that he's being plagued by some disease, when metal begins coming out of his cheek, and having insane dreams involving the metal fetishist. This ramps up as his girlfriend comes to visit, and his member becomes a giant metal drill, eventually impaling her with it. The metal at first seemed foreign, until slowly it brings out what can be deemed the more natural side of the person, facing alienation and paranoia, directly correlating to the conformity and repression of self. It becomes clear he's starting to derive pleasure from the transformation just as much as horror. His transformation and intertwining with the metal grows as he comes to realization that the metal fetishist he hit is somehow orchestrating it after resurrecting. Ultimately, he becomes his true form, a metal monster in a beautiful stop-motion sequence which I cannot begin to imagine just how much time, effort, and energy went into creating it, and I think it is the best way they would have ever been able to make this scene happen. The post-industrial urban setting shows an almost opposite pivot of other bodily transformations. Instead of an outside power, it is personal lust over the surroundings and the want to be completely immersed within it, becoming a part of it. It's a cyberpunk predecessor showing the transfiguration of the fear of technology advancement into the other acceptance of it. Tetsu is always easier to see than describe. This is the most I can describe it. It is It is undescribable, truly. I think everyone needs to watch this movie. I love this movie. I think this movie is so cool. It's just literally like the coolest movie ever. I get geeked about it. That's why I'm like, right now I have like Tetsu nails. I love it. Tetsu the Iron Man. Like, it's, that's why I'm like, I can't even like really break it down. You just have to watch this movie. If you're gonna watch any movie I talked about, please, for the love of God, watch Tetsu. And since we're now in this realm of Japanese body horror, I'm going to finish on what is deemed, at times still, the best and or most important animated film ever made, which is the 1988 film Akira. It's set in dystopian year 2019 after a Third World War and nuclear explosion. Tokyo is forced to redesign its city and government from the leftovers. It's still one of the most influential points of cyberpunk. This whole situation surrounding Tokyo, of course, leads to corrupt government and excessive police violence. We then begin following the leader of a biker gang whose best friends develop telekinetic powers after a motorcycle accident. They're then beginning to have to face the conspiracies surrounding them, involving military, government, and total, utter violence. Akira is often referred to as being overtly violent. I think all the violence that takes place in Akira is necessary for the setting and the pacing and the plot and everything. I don't think this is an overtly gory film. I think it's kind of crazy when people say Akira is like so violent, but you know, that's just me. And I think the film paints the truth of not all technological advancements are for the betterment of humans. It also asks extremely important philosophical questions in a setting so insane that it digests much easier, not alienating you, the viewer, when starting these tough topics of conversation. There's a reason it is still regarded as one of the best animated films of all time, and I think even for being 1988, I think the style of this is so cool, and I think it's still worth a watch. Like, I know people are intimidated by older animation styles or movies that have such as high regard, but I think if you like anything involving cyberpunk stuff, body horror, honestly, anything involving the destruction of government, dystopian stuff, and like, watch Akira. Akira is always worth a watch, and you're gonna watch that and see how influential that is. Akira has influenced so much animation and general cinema and cyberpunk and dystopian stuff, like, clear as freaking day. At the end of the day, body horror is far beyond shock and gore. There are films that dig into our deepest dreams and nightmares, reflecting the world around us and forcing us to view the criticisms and commentary on the issues around us. It often serves as metaphors in the intense sense, exploring themes and topics many are too comfortable to face, like sexuality, identity, and morality. By forcing us to face these preconceived notions about our bodies and its capabilities, these films create the space to confront our weaknesses and anxieties. And that makes body horror one of our most valuable and important subgenres of horror. Now, of course, I didn't get to discuss all body horror films or even all influential body horror films, but I want to discuss films that I find timeless and important films to watch. So if you watch any of these movies, thanks for watching them. I have my Letterboxd links down below. If you're interested in a body horror list, I have one there along with many other movie lists that go with videos on here. I do want to shout out Reanimator. I wanted to talk about Reanimator when I talked about The Fly, but listen, I'm not trying to make this video too crazy, but, you know, Reanimator, beautiful film. Love it. That's why we got green lights today. And if you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. Genuinely, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. God damn it, we're about to hit 100K, and that is so cool and amazing. And thank you to everyone who's watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. So, have you seen any of these body horror films? Have you seen none of them? Let me know down below what your favorite body horror film is. And I'm sure this comment section is going to be littered with Cronenberg, as it should. Since David Lynch is passing every day, I am praying someone is watching David Cronenberg take his medications and his vitamins and drinking a glass of water. David Cronenberg is one of the most influential people to me in my existence and my art and everything I do. So, you know, I love body horror. I think it is just one of the best subgenres of horror. I really do. Sue me about it. But, yeah, make sure to leave down below your favorite body horror film. I will see you next time. I'm Darby Valentine on all my social media. They are all linked down below. Make sure you are following me on Instagram and Twitter. That is where I'm the most active and usually can kind of see what a new video is going to be about based on things I be posting. So make sure to follow me there. Everything's linked down below. Merch as well. Shout out to everyone getting merch. If you're getting these posters of me and hoodies and stuff, because we're selling the posters like crazy, please post them and tag me. I want to see the posters on your wall. With that, I'll see you next time. If you like this video, maybe you would like my video about extreme horror. With that, thanks for liking, commenting, and subscribing.